إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته وبعد. And welcome back to another show of From the Mind of a Mufti. You're listening to myself, Abu Layth Al-Maliki. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has taught us in a hadith, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمْ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that I have simply been sent to perfect the good characteristics, character and qualities of human beings. That I have been sent as a model for people, that people can see the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and through his teachings they can learn how to perfect their character. In another hadith, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that a munafiq will be somebody that will never possess two characteristics, two qualities, two elements. One, good character, al-akhlaq, husn al-khulq, and the other, the fiqh of the deen, an understanding of the deen. That if somebody was to have both of these, that person could never be a munafiq by the converse understanding of the hadith. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed such an emphasis throughout his entire life on good character. The reason I feel that this is so important is that we are finding, unfortunately, ourselves falling victim to this trend of assaulting the characteristics, the qualities, the traits of people very personally. That we are finding that people will quite often fall victim to hating, if you like, not just a sin but the actual sinner. We see in these societies, especially in countries like the UK and Europe and other countries like this, we see that where there is a great non-Muslim presence, people start to hold non-Muslims in great contempt. Now this in itself is incredibly concerning, because we find that when we look at the Sharia, many of the fuqaha have actually spoken and said, especially like people from the Hanafi school of thought, many of the Malikiya and other ulama have said that people that have not actually embraced Islam are not actually mukhatab bil furu', are not actually addressed with the juz'iyat, with the finite detail of the Sharia. They are initially just addressed with the belief in Allah, that they should embrace the actual belief, and once they embrace that, the other things follow. Then this is not just restricted to non-Muslims, this is amongst ourselves, amongst Muslims, people. We as human beings, I mean, it is part of our psyche that we will do things like stereotype. But as Muslims, we should attempt to rise above these things and situations. We see that if we study the seerah, if we study the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, we will see that we will actually be quite surprised if we were to find ourselves in a hypothetical situation where a Sahabi was to walk into our lives today. Unfortunately, that companion may actually be prohibited from speaking on the mimbar in several of the masajid because he would not fit a particular criteria. When we look at the lives of the Sahaba, we find many of them, their culture was very different. Many of them had plaits in their hair. Many of them would tie their hair as ponytails. Many of them would live and act and behave in different ways to what we perceive today as perhaps being our cultural understanding of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that when we call to Islam, when we call to this path, ud'u ila sabili rabbik bil hikmah, call with wisdom. When a Bedouin walked into the masjid of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he urinated in a corner, and the companions were so infuriated with this that they were about to leap onto him and just, I mean, they wanted to really, some of them wanted to kill him to that extent. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam quickly stopped them and said, what are you doing? And he himself brought water and washed away what the Bedouin had done. And then he said to the Bedouin, he said, إِنَّمَا هَذَا masjid. He said, this is a masjid. لَا يَصْلُحْ لِهَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاءِ. That it does not befit a place of worship that you do things like this. But then, and that person, the Bedouin, actually, he not only did he embrace Islam, but he made a very interesting type of dua. He said, Ya Allah, he said, Irhamni, he said, have mercy on me and have mercy on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and don't have mercy on anybody other than that. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at him and he said, لَقَدْ ضَيَّقْتَ وَاسِعًا. That something which is so vast, you've tried to restrain it. And then he turned to his companions in a riwayah and he said to them, إِنَّمَا مَثَلِي وَمَثَلُكُمْ كَرَجُلٍ لَهُ رَاحِلَةٍ. He said that my example and your example is like a man who has an animal, a camel. And he says, فَانْفَلَتَتْ مِنْهُ. That this camel, it ran off. And it says, and the people chased after it. فَمَا زَادُوهَا إِلَّا نُفُورًا. The more they ran after it, the more the camel ran further. And then the owner comes, and the Prophet said, the owner comes and he says, دَعُونِي وَرَاحِلَتِي أَنَا أَعْلَمُ بِرَاحِلَتِي. Leave me and my camel. I know how to treat my camel. And he says, and he picks up some herbs and things like, he picks up some grass and he kind of waves it at the rahila, at the camel, and he says, فَأَتَتْ إِلَيْهِ حَتَّى أَخَذَ بِزِمَامِهِ. Until it walks up to the owner and he takes hold of its reins. And he said, this is my example and yours. That had I left you, you would have probably killed this poor man, who just simply was unaware of the etiquettes. But now he's somebody who embraces Allah and his faith. And this is the difference in wisdom and insight. Nowadays it becomes very easy for all of us to, once again, like I said, it's part of our human psyche. We do things like we stereotype, we compartmentalize, we pigeonhole people. But we've got to, as Muslims, rise above this. It's not about a description. It's not about, we've got to move away from just this phenomenological approach. Everything is about culture, wearing a thobe or doing this. I mean, that's all good if somebody wants to do it, but we have to understand that Islam is not about a particular type of culture. It's not about a particular type of representation. It's about an understanding, a deen, a way of life, embracing that. With this, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a correct understanding, to teach us, and to give us the tawfiq to follow in the guidance and the footstep of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his companions. Jazakumullah al-khair for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.